The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you all for attending our first GHY University webinar of 2015. This course will provide a how-to guide for importing into the US, giving you tips and showing you the risks. After the presentation, we will be sending out a copy of the presentation slide deck, the recording of this webinar, along with a survey to help us better your GHY University experience for future webinars. If you wish to post on social media about this presentation, please do, but we kindly ask that you use the hashtag GHYU. A few housekeeping rules before we begin. This event will be recorded, and both the recording and the presentation slide deck will be made available after the webinar. You will all be in listen-only mode for the webinar. If you have any questions, please use the Ask a Question function on your GoToWebinars panel. All questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation unless there is a common recurring question. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, please use the chat function on your GoToWebinars panel or email Nigel directly at nigel@ghy.com. Today's GHY webinar will be presented by our own account manager for GHY USA, Corey Korpatnicki. Corey is the account manager for GHY USA, the U.S. brokerage division of GHY International. She brings 20 years of cross-industry experience to all her client engagements, with the last 14 years as a licensed customs broker. Her experience, combined with her role at GHY USA, provides opportunity to create and cultivate lasting relationships with importers across many industry sectors, and with U.S. customs officials as well, a combination that works well on behalf of all clients she represents. Without further ado, allow me to pass it over to Corey.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you everybody for sticking by us through our technical difficulties. Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on basics of importing into the U.S. Before we dive into the importing basics, I wanted to share with you some information on GHY International. GHY manages more than $5 billion of cross-border trade annually through our Canadian and U.S. brokerage operations. We pay more than $100 million annually to governments on behalf of our clients, and we work with more than 1,000 importers and exporters. Growth and continuity through 4 successive generations is an incredible milestone. GHY has achieved its thanks to dedicated people delivering quality service to great customers. It is a testament to the power of the highest level of commitment, professionalism, and integrity. I'd like to outline our care principles. We care about making life easier for our clients, from finding better, more efficient ways to bring shipments over the border to stepping up at moments of truth to change the course of someone's day. We care about building a positive workplace culture, which has been a priority for generations at GHY, and we make every effort to ensure manageable levels of stress for all team members. This includes having enough associates to do the job right. We care about finding creative ways to drive innovation and push the boundaries of what it means to be a customs broker. Most importantly, we strive to understand our client and share our collective knowledge with them to help succeed at global trade. We are committed to going the extra mile to provide the best service and trade solutions possible. To do so, we invest time and resources into training and equip our associates with technology and tools that they need to exceed. To comply with customs laws and regulations, importers must understand customs overall compliance framework and how filing of documents with customs to clear goods into the U.S. fits within this structure. Within this compliance framework, importers must consider the core substantive legal requirements, which we will cover today. When any good is imported into the U.S., it must be cleared or entered through one of the 325 customs ports of entry. In doing so, customs requires that certain information be provided by importers to ensure compliance. The entry process. When a shipment reaches the U.S., the party responsible for clearing the goods through Customs and Border Protection is known as the importer of record. The importer of record or their broker must file an entry package for the goods at that port of entry. The entry package will form customs basis to evaluate the importer's use of reasonable care, as well as the assessment of legal liability related to that entry. Not just anyone should act as an importer of record. For example, a friend of yours who wants you to clear goods for them because they have a broker already, because you already have a broker established. We don't consider this a very good idea, and we'll cover off the reasons why in the next couple of slides. All entries must be covered by an import bond to secure potential duties, taxes, and fees owed to customs related to the imported goods. So let's say you're a high volume importer and you have an annual continuous bond on file. You do this favor for your customer or friend or whomever, and the goods they ship are in violation, inadmissible, or just plain illegal, unbeknownst to them, of course. This single transaction puts your bond at risk. It also puts your reputation as an importer at risk with U.S. Customs. This could disrupt the legitimate flow of your goods to your U.S. customers. Due to the complexity of clearing shipments through customs ports of entry, the increased use of electronic filing has made the process much faster, but in no way simpler. Consequently, many importers either employ in-house licensed customs brokers to facilitate the import process or use outside customs brokerage service providers to handle the shipment clearance process. Some importers have both in-house compliance professionals that review the work done by your customs brokerage service provider. In order to conduct business on behalf of an importer, the customs broker must obtain a power of attorney from each of their importers. Brokers can provide tremendous assistance in customs regulations and requirements, but the ultimate liability always remains on the importer of record. Another reason the favor is not such a good idea. Customs now requires importers to file certain data elements before cargo destined for the U.S. arrives in the U.S. port of entry or is laden on board a vessel at a foreign port. The carrier is ultimately responsible for the manifest filing for rail, air, and truck submissions based on information provided to them by the shipper. The Ocean Importer Security Filing, also known as ISF or 10+2, is a joint effort of the shipper, importer, freight forwarder, and steamship. The ISF rule mandates that the 10 data elements must be filed at least 24 hours prior to the loading of the cargo on an ocean vessel bound for the U.S. Failure to file ISF data in a timely fashion may result in customs penalties against the importer up to $5,000 per violation, and on top of that, it will detain the release of your goods by U.S. Customs, which in turn can cost you large dollars in demurrage, exam, and storage fees. Entering merchandise involves providing customs with enough information to release the merchandise into the importer's custody and providing customs with sufficient information so that they can determine the proper amount of duties, taxes, and fees to be paid by the importer. This process is primarily automated through a system called the Automated Broker Interface, also known as ABI. You or your broker will transmit through ABI to the customs system that's currently called Automated Commercial System, but is soon to be taken over by the Automated Commercial Environment, also known as ACE. Once the entry has been transmitted and the goods have arrived in the U.S., Customs as well as other government agencies have the right to examine the goods and determine admissibility, proper marking, proper tariff, or origin reporting. Agencies such as FDA and USDA have agents physically located at those ports of entry to inspect or take samples of your goods. Now we'll get into tariff classification. Every good imported into the U.S. must be assigned a tariff classification under the Harmonized Tariff Schedule of the U.S. As some of you may know, the first 6 digits of the tariff are the same or harmonized in the US and Canada, as well as each country that is a member of the World Customs Organization. After the first 6, each country creates their own unique 8 to 10 digit terms based on what they deem as important statistical information. The tariff classification of a product will dictate the applicable rate of duty applied to that product upon importation into the U.S. The classification of a product is also a key factor in determining whether it is subject to quotas, restraints, embargoes, or other restrictions. Tariff classification is used to determine if and under what circumstances a product may be entitled to special tariff preferences. The most common preferences along the northern border is NAFTA. The tariff number determines the rules in which a good could qualify under NAFTA. U.S. Customs will only allow a NAFTA claim on Canadian or Mexican goods, but not on goods of U.S. origin. That is where the special tariff provision of 9801 comes in. It is reserved for goods that have not been advanced in value or improved in condition while in Canada, and entry can be submitted with completed declarations from the foreign shipper and importer of record. It is important to keep in mind that upon request by Customs, a manufacturer's affidavit or the NAFTA the goods entered Canada under would need to be supplied to substantiate the 9801 claim. GHY University has other webinars dedicated to determining NAFTA eligibility and tariff classification, which can be found on our YouTube channel. Next, we'll go through some valuation. Proper customs valuation is important because most duty rates are based on a percentage of the value of an imported product, and total duty payments are thus determined by multiplying the applicable duty rate by the product's customs value. Transaction value, also known as price paid or payable, is the preferable method to use and the easiest to prove if requested to do so by U.S. Customs. Customs has recently increased the number of requests for proof of payment to confirm the accuracy of the value reported to them on the customs invoice and the entry summary. If the transaction value cannot be used, then certain alternate methods are considered, such as transaction value of identical or similar merchandise, deductive value, and/or computed value. Country of origin laws. It is important to understand that there are different country of origin rules. Rules for determining the origin of a product for purposes of marking upon import into the U.S. are different than the rules used to determine if that product qualifies for reduced duties under a tariff preference program like NAFTA. The rules for determining the origin of a product under a given free trade agreement impose a higher standard. For example, the preference laws require more processing and/or qualifying content than the rules for determining the country of origin for customs marking purposes. It is important to keep in mind the NAFTA rules of origin will override or trump the rules of origin for marking purposes. The country of origin of an imported article is the country of manufacture, production, or growth of the article. Thus, if an imported product is wholly obtained or produced in a single country, then that country will be considered the country of origin. If the imported article contains material from or was processed in more than one country, then origin is the country where the article last underwent substantial transformation. For example, let's say you imported rolls of paper from Italy, classifiable in Chapter 48. Then you print on them, cut and collate, then bind them into books classifiable in Chapter 49. You've changed the essential character from paper to books. Country of origin marking. The purpose of this law is to prevent the possibility of misleading or deceiving the ultimate purchaser as to the origin of an article. Customs regulations require that upon import into the U.S., the good itself or the container holding the good be clearly marked with the name of the country of origin in English. When marking products, importers must ensure that the country of origin marking is readily visible by the consumer and that the name of the country of origin is legible by font, size, color, and placement of the text. Examples of specific wording may be used, such as product of Canada, made in Canada, content made in Canada, or as in the previous example, printed in Canada. If the container or article bears a geographical reference that describes or suggests an origin different than the origin of the product, such as the importer address that indicates the United States, then the name of the actual country of origin must be placed in close proximity and in comparable font and size to the other geographical reference. If a good is examined by customs and found in violation, they will issue a marking notice. Your options at that point are to pay the 10% duty, mark the goods, or export them back to the country of origin. Any intentional removal, defacement, destruction, or alteration of a marking of the country of origin in order to conceal this information may result in criminal penalties and/or imprisonment. Marking exemptions. In certain circumstances, customs is authorized to exempt certain articles from the country of origin marking requirements. The most significant of these exemptions are the goods that are for further manufacturing, goods that are provided for on the J list, and goods that are for the consignee's own use and not intended for sale. The outermost container is required to be marked even if the items themselves are exempt from marking. Next, we'll cover entry summary and the documentation associated with that. Once the goods are released, there is a 10-day window in which adjustments can be made. We often see commodities such as grains enter under estimated weights and values. This window provides an opportunity for the importer to get the scaled weights and provide amended information to the broker prior to filing the final summary. Once the value, origin, and tariff number is confirmed and no adjustments are necessary, then the next step is filing the entry summary. This package consists of the previously filed entry package together with the actual customs entry form 7501 or 7501. The 7501 is a key document for customs purposes. Among other things, it includes the importer's declarations as to the classification, origin, and value of the imported merchandise. Post-entry. Post-entry is after the entry summary has been filed with customs on a statement. After entry summary, but prior to liquidation, importers or their brokers can submit post-entry amendments if any errors or omissions are found after final summary. Post-entry amendments can be filed for various types of errors, such as valuation, origin, or classification, and can often result in additional duty payment or even possible refund. For example, if you are unable to provide the appropriate information that supports a claim of 9801 for U.S. goods returning at the time of entry summary filing, you can submit a post-entry amendment with the substantiating information and request a refund of the duties paid under the general tariff rate. NAFTA refunds can also be submitted in this fashion for up to 1 year after the date of import. Liquidation. Duties paid at the time of entry are referred to as duty deposits because they are merely estimates and not considered to be customs' final assessment of duties owed. The entry remains open or unliquidated for approximately 314 days after the date of entry. Although this can be extended in certain circumstances, such as entries subject to anti-dumping or countervailing duties, entries that are under review by customs, or entries that are subject to a customs request for information. During this period, either the importer or customs can review the file and make or request revisions to the entry, for example, if the value is incorrect, classification, or origin. Once the entry is deemed liquidated, it is considered closed in customs system. The purpose of the liquidation process is to provide importers certainty with respect to liability related to their import transactions. U.S. law requires anyone whose activities are subject to customs authority, such as importers, carriers, or brokers, to name a few, must retain all documentation that pertains to importing activity or to the information contained in the required records related to such imports and that are normally kept in the ordinary course of business. The documents include, but are not limited to, the entry summary, bond information, correspondence, binding rulings, certificates of origin, commercial invoices or pro forma invoices, a packing list manifests, bills of lading and/or purchase orders, to name a few. And that wraps up today's presentation. I'll turn it back over to Maria for any questions that have come in.
Thank you very much, Corey, for that incredibly educational discussion, and thank you all for attending today's GHY University webinar. We'll just wait a moment here to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, well, I'll keep going here. If you have any questions, please feel free. If you'd like more information or clarity regarding importing into the U.S., please contact Corey at corie@ghy.com, and feel free to connect with GHY International Online via Facebook, LinkedIn, and/or Twitter. To reiterate, we will be sending out the copy of the presentation slide deck, the recording of this webinar, along with a survey regarding your experience. Again, these surveys are very important to us to know how we are doing, and it would be greatly appreciated if you could take the 5 minutes needed to fill it out for us. Okay, still no questions. Well, I want to thank you all again for attending today, and please look for our upcoming webinar in June on basics of importing into Canada. We hope you all have a great day.